First at 9 this Tuesday, the 20th of January 2026. Module mess. Procedural lapses occurred in the printing of Grade 6 English modules, reveals Minister Bimal Ratnayaka. Education trade unions accuse the government of shielding responsible officials. Red alert. Sri Lanka's proposed counterterrorism law risks further abuses, asserts Human Rights Watch. Calls on the government to review the draft legislation before finalising the law. Wage hike. Cabinet greenlights the proposal to increase plantation workers' daily wages to 1,750 rupees. Power concerns. Substandard coal sparks heated debate in Parliament. Electricity trade unions threaten island-wide strikes if the government violates agreements during CEB restructuring.
Kalin baby soap rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on Derana News Channel, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. I'm Derana, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story. Minister Bimal Ratnayaka claims that certain content has been included in the new Grade 6 learning modules in violation of the Education Ministry's guidelines. Meanwhile, education trade unionists accuse the government of shielding officials responsible for the oversights in the modules.
The reference to an inappropriate website in the Grade 6 English language module introduced under the government's new education reforms came under close public scrutiny. Following a probe into the controversial module, the Deputy Director General of the National Institute of Education was sent on compulsory leave, while two other officials were suspended in connection with the incident.
The National Institute of Education launched an investigation into the matter and the relevant report has already been submitted. As part of the inquiry, statements were recorded from 8 officials and disciplinary action has been taken against 3 of them. The issue cannot be dismissed as mere negligence. This is the Education Ministry's accepted procedure for the printing of textbooks. The process is subject to scrutiny at no fewer than 12 distinct stages. During Phase 1, the modules undergo internal review, followed by Phase 2, in which the modules prepared by the NIE are submitted to the Ministry of Education for evaluation. Thereafter, the content is open to third-party review, incorporating feedback from external educators. Subsequently, the material is forwarded to the Educational Publication Department, which plays a role beyond a mere publishing house. Prior to printing, the modules are subjected to 3 rounds of meticulous proofreading, while the final version is reviewed 11 times before approval for print. In parallel, the Criminal Investigation Department has launched a separate inquiry to determine how this oversight could have occurred despite such stringent protocol. However, it must be emphasized that there was no deliberate attempt to include obscene material in the school curriculum as alleged by the opposition leader. I invite him to conduct a comprehensive review of all Grade 6 modules and demonstrate any such intent on the part of the government. This outcome, however, arose due to the failure of the responsible authorities to adhere strictly to the prescribed guidelines, as the final amendments did not pass through all 12 required stages of review.
In the meantime, the Grade 6 Parents Union staged another protest this morning in front of the Presidential Secretariat, calling for the swift implementation of the education revised curriculum for the 6th grade. This development came despite a previous protest being halted following the receipt of a positive response to a letter submitted to the Presidential Secretariat yesterday. In a similar move, the Parents and Teachers Collective of Galle initiated a Satyagraha campaign this afternoon, demanding that the education reforms be implemented this year. Meanwhile, a group of teachers met the President's Director General of Public Relations, Dharmasiri Gamage, today to hold discussions regarding the new education reforms. Against this backdrop, opposition councillors of the Homagama Pradeshiya Sabha staged a protest objecting the proposed education reforms. Meanwhile, education trade unions commented on the current developments in the education sector.
ශාස්ත්‍රීය කටයුතු මණ්ඩලයට
After new government assumes power, a group of officials are appointed to the National Institute of Education Academic Affairs Board in accordance with the preferences of the Minister of Education. These officials approve the relevant modules. The governing body of the NIE also endorsed the modules. The board comprises of individuals holding both political and official appointments. All officials who participated in this process must be held accountable for their actions. The government cannot shirk responsibility for this issue by only suspending a select few while absolving others of responsibility.
ආණ්ඩුවට ගැලවෙන්න පුළුවන් චෝදනාවක් නෙමෙයි.
දර්ශන සමරවීර මහත්තයා තමයි
It was Darshan Samaravira who submitted the English language module to the Academic Affairs Board of the National Institute of Education. He has since been placed on compulsory leave but will continue to receive his salary. The government has only made those responsible more comfortable. It raises a serious question as to whether it is justifiable for the authorities to accord preferential treatment to political affiliates while holding others to stricter standards. In light of this development, it is evident that the government continues to shield those within its own ranks.
තනකද කියන ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි මෙතන පේන්නේ.
ඔබේ සම හඳුනාගෙන ඖෂධීය ශාකසාරමය forever face wash එකක් භාවිතා කරන්න.
Cabinet spokesperson Minister Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa says that the government is taking steps to ensure that the public and all stakeholders are accurately informed of the new education reforms. He made these remarks during the cabinet briefing today.
තන තන උද්ඝෝෂණ තියෙනවා යලි අයශ්‍රේණිය මොඩල් එක ඉල්ලලා ඔබතුමාලා තීරණයක් ගත්තා මේක වසරකින් කල් දාන්න දැන් මේ විරෝධතා හින්දා මේ තීරණය වෙනස් වෙනවද
අධ්‍යාපන ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ නතර කරලා නැහැ.
Education reforms have not been suspended. All other matters pertaining to education reforms are continuing. In terms of curriculum revisions, the revised curriculum for grade 1 will be implemented from the 29th of January. However, the grade 6 curriculum revision has been postponed by a few months. During that time, we will be able to clarify the confusion created by a few individuals. The government is responsible for alleviating all doubts and getting everyone on board. That will take some time. It is evident that a considerable number of parents are calling for reforms. They are the ones who are taking to the streets in protest. We understand their determination and expectation of ensuring a bright future for their children. However, the grade 6 curriculum revision will have to be postponed until we clear out the seeds of doubt planted in society by the opposition.
මේ 6 ශ්‍රේණියේ විෂයමාලා ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ කල් දාන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා.
අශෝක රන්නල හිටපු කතානායකතුමාගේ ආචාර්ය උපාධිය යථා කාලයේදී ඉදිරිපත් කරයි උඩ ආචාර්ය උපාධියක් තියනවා කියලා ඔබතුමා මීට පෙර අවස්ථාවකදී සඳහන් කළා. ඊයේ දෙරණ 360 වැඩසටහනේදී විමල් රත්නායක මහත්මයා කියනවා පැහැදිලිව එතුමාට ආචාර්ය උපාධියක් නැහැ කියලා මම හිතනවා කියලා. එතුමාගේ ස්ථාවරය. ඔබතුමා එදා දරපු ස්ථාවරේ එතුමාට උපාධියක් තියනවා යථා කාලයේ ඉදිරිපත් කරයි කියන එක අදත් දරන්නේ මොකද්ද ඔබතුමා අද දරන ස්ථාවරේ?
අශෝක රංගවල മന്ത്രിතුමා අපිට ඉදිරිපත් කරපු කාරණේ තමයි අපි කිව්වේ.
We communicated the facts as they were presented to us by Ashoka Ranwala. It has been some time since this promise was made. Ranwala is yet to inform the party or the government of the existence of a doctorate. We expect a response soon. You and I are both anticipating this response. He will provide us with an answer.
පිළිතුරක් ලබා දෙවි.
පොඩ්ඩක් අහලා දැනගන්න යාගෙන් දැන් මොකද තත්ත්වය කියලා ඊළඟ සතියේයි කියන්න පුළුවන්.
බොහොමසෝදී මටත් හම්බ වෙනවා ඔබතුමාලටත් හම්බ වෙනවා අහලා දැනගන්න පුළුවන්.
ඔබතුමාලාගේ ප්‍රධාන ලේකම් හිටපු නන්දන ගුණතිලක මහත්මයාගේ මංගල උත්සවයට සහභාගී වෙන්නේ නැද්ද?
සහභාගී වෙනවා.
We will be attending the funeral. The final rites will be performed tomorrow. His mortal remains were placed at the Panadura Town Hall. You are aware that the NPP holds power at the Panadura Urban Council. We extended the necessary honours there. I was not able to attend the funeral yesterday. However, I will definitely attend the funeral. Many of our political representatives have attended. We will be paying our final respects to him, especially since he represented the Kalutara district during his political career.
ඒ සම්බන්ධ අවසන් ගෞරවයට දක්වනවා.
Leader of the United Republic Front Patali Champika Ranawaka asserts that the JVP should better educate its members before attempting to reform the country's education sector. Meanwhile, several other political representatives also commented on the government's education reforms.
If these reforms had been introduced following public consultations, the current backlash could have been avoided. It would have been more productive if education had been treated as a national policy that unites everyone. Because there was no prior discussion, delays in implementation were inevitable. Unfortunately, this is the current reality. Our plan is to introduce these reforms more effectively following another round of discussions, after which any issues will be addressed. The reforms have not been suspended in any way. They will will continue. The government itself is organizing protests around the country using its supporters while blaming the opposition, claiming that the opposition is preventing the implementation of these excellent education reforms, which is causing delays. I saw a protester claiming that her child is refusing to attend school if the new modules are not being taught. We are talking about children as young as 10 or 12 years old. The government has in fact undermined its own reforms. Look at how much the opposition is trying to derail these education reforms. Their goal is not to improve the education system but to inconvenience the government by obstructing the reforms. It is the JVP itself that needs education reforms. It would be beneficial if they could better educate the next generation of JVP members by implementing these reforms rather than only teaching them about the 5 classes. The public now understands the reality of those who have only learned about these 5 classes. They may have completed all 5 classes, but they have failed the 6th grade. We urge the government to double-check the material before including them in textbooks. If mistakes occur, accountability must be taken. There is no point in questioning whether we went through these materials. Prime Minister, there is also no benefit in passing 5 classes if you fail the 6th grade. Therefore, we request that you introduce the reforms in a way that successfully ensures progress beyond the 6th grade.
Plantation workers' daily wages are set to be increased to 1,750 rupees after the Cabinet of Ministers approved the relevant proposal. With that, here are some of the key decisions taken during this week.
To uplift plantation workers, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the 1,550 rupee daily wage and a 200 rupee attendance incentive proposed through Budget 2026. The incentive will initially be paid through plantation companies and later credited directly to workers' bank accounts. The Cabinet of Ministers approved Sri Lanka's entry into a Memorandum of Understanding to establish the Indian Ocean Coastal Alliance, strengthening regional cooperation in managing tuna fisheries. The alliance, involving 11 Indian Ocean countries, aims to prevent overfishing, improve food security, uplift coastal communities, and ensure the sustainable development of marine resources. Addressing water scarcity and regional development, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the recommencement of the Q-Loya Reservoir Development Project, which had been suspended due to the 2022 economic crisis. The project will be implemented from 2026 to 2031 using local funds, with the revised total cost estimated at 23.456 billion rupees, benefiting the Mullaitivu and Vavuniya districts. In public sector reforms, the Cabinet of Ministers approved revising pension provisions for government officers appointed after January 1, 2016, confirming their entitlements to the existing pension scheme.
Human Rights Watch says Sri Lanka's proposed counter-terrorism legislation contains provisions similar to the existing Prevention of Terrorism Act, raising concerns regarding its compliance with international human rights standards. The organization called on the government to review the draft legislation and engage in wider consultations before finalizing the law.
In a statement issued today, the Human Rights Watch said the Protection of the State from Terrorism Bill, published by the Ministry of Justice in December 2025, does not meet benchmarks outlined by United Nations counterterrorism experts and may affect Sri Lanka's commitments to the European Union under the GSP Plus trade agreement. The proposed law is intended to replace the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which has been in force since 1979 and has been linked to allegations of arbitrary detentions and other rights violations. Sri Lanka pledged in 2017 to repeal the PTA and introduce rights-compliant legislation as part of the process to regain GSP Plus trade benefits. According to Human Rights Watch, the draft bill includes broad definitions of terrorism that could extend beyond internationally accepted standards and potentially affect political activity and freedom of expression. The organization also raises concern over provisions allowing detention without charge for extended periods, including detention ordered by the Defense Secretary, as well as expanded powers of arrest and search. The group further notes that the bill grants the executive broad authority to prescribe organizations, restrict movement and designate prohibited areas, while highlighting that safeguards against abuse may be limited. Human Rights Watch calls on the government to review the draft legislation, suspend the existing PTA and engage in wider consultations before finalizing the law. The government is yet to publicly respond to the latest observations.
The Supreme Court today scheduled for consideration on March 9th the appeals filed by former ministers Mahindananda Aluthgamage and Nalin Fernando, who are currently serving rigorous prison sentences. The former ministers were convicted of costing the government over 53 million rupees in losses through the unlawful distribution of carom and checkers boards imported through the Sathosa Corporation.
On May 29, 2025, the Colombo High Court delivered its verdict in the case involving former ministers Mahindananda Aluthgamage and Nalin Fernando, who were charged with the unlawful distribution of 14,000 carom boards and 11,000 checkers boards imported through the Sathosa Corporation to various sports associations during the 2015 presidential election, resulting in a financial loss of 53.1 million rupees to the state. Following the verdict, a three-member High Court bench imposed sentences of rigorous imprisonment, 25 years on Nalin Fernando, the chairman of Sathosa at the time, and 20 years on former minister Mahindananda Aluthgamage. In addition to these sentences, Fernando was fined 400,000 rupees, while Aluthgamage was ordered to pay a fine of 200,000 rupees. Subsequently, both defendants filed appeals before the Supreme Court challenging the High Court ruling. The appeal was considered today before a two-member Supreme Court bench comprising Chief Justice Preethipadman Surasena and Justice Achala Vengappuli. After reviewing the submissions, the bench fixed the appeal for hearing on the 9th of March.
Welcome back to First at 9. Now taking you to more local news. Electricity trade unions threaten an island-wide strike action if the government proceeds with the restructuring of the Ceylon Electricity Board without honouring agreements with unions. This warning was issued at a press conference where union representatives stressed that failure to address their concerns would leave them with no alternative but to take industrial action.
The Cabinet recently approved a proposal to transfer the assets, liabilities, functions, duties and operations of the Ceylon Electricity Board to several successor entities as part of a restructuring plan covering electricity generation, transmission, distribution and supply. However, electricity trade unions insist that several outstanding issues must be resolved before the restructuring process can proceed.
Ceylon Electricity Board employees engaged in a 37-day work-to-rule campaign. Subsequently, we were given a written promise outlining how the restructuring would proceed. As of today, 3 months since we received that written assurance, we have been informed that the government is preparing to issue a gazette liquidating the Electricity Board by early February. The Electricity Act, as well as a Supreme Court ruling, outlines the procedures that must be completed prior to liquidating the CEB. These requirements have not been completely fulfilled as yet. Therefore, the publication of the Gazette must be delayed. This strike action will have a serious impact on the country's economy and people's livelihoods. The restructuring of a key pillar of the economy should be conducted systematically. The government is instead attempting to push through a restructuring process that misleads the public. They are compromising transparency in the name of business interests. We urge the government not to liquidate the Ceylon Electricity Board on or around February 1st. If so, CEB employees will not assume responsibility for any subsequent consequences. CEB employees restored electricity connections across the entire country within just 10 days after the devastation caused by Cyclone Detwa. We urge the government not to underestimate the country's most powerful workforce and push the nation into darkness.
Welcome back. Minister of Energy Kumar Jayakudi informed Parliament today that penalties can be imposed on the supplier if coal provided to the Norachole thermal power plant fails to meet required quality standards. He made this statement in response to a question raised by opposition leader Sajid Premadasa.
How was the tender to import coal for the Lakvijay power plant awarded? Does the minister acknowledge that this reflects a failure in governance that endangered power generation and public funds rather than being a technical issue? Also, the tender period was reduced to 21 days. Does the government selected supplier have prior experience in supplying major power plants such as Norachole? Are there any reports indicating that this coal procurement does not meet the NCV requirements for these power plants? We have received reports suggesting that these NCV values do not match. Did the government receive such a report.
ලියාපදින් සැපයුම්කරුවන් තෝරාගනු ලැබුණා.
The suppliers were selected according to the procurement guidelines through an international competitive bidding process. During this procurement, no harm was caused to power generation or public funds, and there were no technical issues. Therefore, as the subject minister, I do not acknowledge this as a failure in governance. I acknowledge that the procurement period was reduced to 21 days following the recommendation of the procurement committee. Since 2023, through corrupt cabinet decisions, the previous government awarded this tender to the same supplier to import coal from Russia illegally. At that time, a company owned by a relative of a minister handled this coal. The energy output of coal should range between 5,900 and 6,200 kilocalories per kilogram. If it does not meet this standard, the supplier must pay a fine. According to discharge reports from the port of discharge, the first shipment recorded 5,020 kilocalories per kilogram. We have independent assessment reports which I can table. Additionally, a performance bond is in place so we can recover the costs. We have the legal documents to enforce this. I challenge anyone to debate me on any mainstream channel or YouTube platform where I will prove that this procurement was highly corrupt. If you accept the challenge, come forward. The answers provided to these questions are false. When the opposition leader asked whether the boilers would be damaged due to substandard coal, the answer was no. In reality, the power output is low, emissions are high, boilers are being damaged and will require frequent maintenance, and the air, water and soil are being polluted. In the past, Minister Alkanta opposed the Sampur power plant even with high quality coal, but now after importing substandard coal, they claim there is no problem and that compensation is possible. You may have seen in the media that the opposition is signing a no confidence motion against the Prime Minister. Since it is not ethical to sign a motion and not present it, we would like to allocate January 22nd and 23rd for the debate, despite the fact that the agenda for the next 4 days have been finalized. We request that the opposition clarify whether the motion will be presented.
විපක්ෂයේ කාර්යභාරයක් අපි සාකච්ඡා කරලා අවශ්‍ය වෙලාවට කටයුතු කරනවා.
Signing may be the opposition's responsibility, but if there is a no confidence motion against the Prime Minister, it should be presented. Please clarify whether the opposition will proceed. As the government, we are ready to debate the no confidence motion as well as education reforms on Thursday and Friday and provide clear answers. Even if the opposition does not present the no confidence motion, we are ready to debate education reforms on these 2 days. We have the right to decide the time, day and place to debate the no confidence motion. However, I would like to state that we are ready to begin the education debate from tomorrow. Given the haste to sign the no confidence motion, I thought that the debate would start today. We are ready to start the debate on Thursday. Are you ready for that? The opposition requested debate covering events from November 12th to 27th regarding Cyclone Ditwa. If the opposition agrees, we are ready to debate education reforms tomorrow. So what is decided for tomorrow? Education reforms or Ditwa? We are ready for both debates. We support education reforms, but the issue in their implementation are the current concern. Let's not focus on the 1981 white paper presented by Ranil Wickremesinghe during President J.R. Jayawardena's tenure. The governing party should assume accountability for the past failures that delayed education reforms. The website was not the problem. If a mistake was made, the responsible person should have been held accountable while ensuring implementations continues. If education reforms are further damaging education, or if it is further challenging the education sector, which is already challenged, then it is a major issue. The government itself seems unclear about the source of these reforms, often debating hearsay. The module system is globally recognized and needed, but the current implementation is mismanaged. This is not an experiment in a lab. Our children are being used as test subjects. Even during difficult times, uniforms were provided, but now they are not. Additionally, Buddhism and the state face a significant threat, largely due to insensitive statements made by the president in Jaffna. The nation is shocked. If it was a mistake, it should be formally withdrawn. Sri Lanka is a state rooted in Buddhism. I encourage everyone to read Dr. Channa Jayasumana's book Rajya Kumatada, which discusses this in detail.
Now in your business news, the Chinese Chamber of Commerce has announced plans to invest in Sri Lanka's dairy farming sector and export-oriented agricultural products. During a recent meeting with Minister of Agriculture K.D. Lalkantha, a delegation from the Chinese Chamber of Commerce proposed investments aimed at utilizing unused land to develop large-scale dairy farms and export-oriented agricultural ventures, including vegetable and fruit production. Discussions reportedly focused on the use of underutilized lands owned by the Land Commissioner General's Department, the Land Reform Commission and the Mahaweli Authority of Sri Lanka. The Chinese Chamber has submitted a formal proposal to the Minister and the Presidential Secretariat. The Colombo Bourse closed in negative territory today as a result of price losses in counters such as Senkadagala Finance, John Keys Holdings and Burkitt Dara. The benchmark ASPI declined by 0.02% to close at 23,623.74. However, the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 increased marginally by 0.08% to end the day at 6,544.80. Market turnover was 5.16 billion rupees. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net sellers, offloading shares worth 90 million rupees. With that, here's a look at today's exchange rates. That's all for tonight from First at 9. For the latest updates around the clock, stay in touch with Ada Derana, the Sri Lankan news brand of international excellence. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.
From across the nation and around the world, this is Sri Lanka's #1 news source, Ada Derana.